Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the results are in from big primary races in key states.
Charlie Crist will take on Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, while Democratic Congressman Jerry Nadler defeats another Democrat in an unusual primary race in New York. And with midterms coming up, there's also growing speculation about the 2024 presidential race. A top issue in the presidential race is certain to be illegal immigration. It's a concern right now as Texas and Arizona are sending immigrants who entered their states to the Democratic cities of Washington, D.C. and New York.
We've opened 13 hotels to increase our capacity, and we're looking at every single option that we have.
That move coming as governors in states hit by immigration say the border crisis is out of control. In Israel, voters prepare for their own upcoming elections. A major focal point: will former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu return to power?
We have a system which is all about pro-Netanyahu, anti-Netanyahu.
We'll get a look at the biggest issues, including the threat from Iran, from our CBN Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. And two music creators from two very different church music cultures, with a new sound born in a place of racial unrest.
Man, so much stuff is going on in the world and in our churches. And family members and friends of ours' lives. And man, we just one day were just like, man, we need to talk about who God is as being a healer.
We'll hear from Jason Clayborn and Stephen McWhirter about their song for our times. It's called Rapha. All those stories and more today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
I want to begin this half hour with the results of some of the most closely watched primary elections around the country Tuesday. In Florida, Charlie Crist easily won the Democratic primary race. Crist was the governor of Florida from 2007 to 2011. He was a Republican then, but has since become a Democrat. He will be challenging the Republican incumbent, Ron DeSantis, who's leading Crist in the polls. And in New York, Congressman Jerry Nadler easily defeated a fellow member of the House, Carolyn Maloney. The two Democrats ran against each other after a court forced the two veteran lawmakers into the same district in New York City. The midterm elections are just months away, but some are already looking ahead to the vote of 2024. Big names are stumping for congressional candidates while building national support towards a possible presidential run. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson has that story.
Former Vice President Mike Pence raised eyebrows at the Iowa State Fair over the weekend, leading to further speculation he's planning a 2024 presidential run.
I'm in Iowa for one reason and one reason only, and that is that Iowa and America need 6 more years of Senator Chuck Grassley.
Pence claims his current focus is helping GOP candidates win back the House and Senate, and he'll assess future plans next year.
After the first of the year, my family and I will do as we've always done, and that is reflect and pray on where we might next serve, where we might next contribute. But today, it's all about winning back the Congress and re-electing Senator Chuck Grassley.
Pence also hinted he's open to testifying before the January 6th committee.
But if they present a formal invitation for the committee, I've said we'll give it due consideration, but we'll do so reflecting on the unique responsibilities that I have to defend the prerogatives of my office as Vice President.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney told ABC News' Jonathan Karl she hopes he does.
When the country has been through something as grave as this was, everyone who has information has an obligation to step forward. So I would hope that he will do that.
Fresh off a primary loss, Cheney's considering her own presidential bid and vows to stop former President Donald Trump from winning again.
I think we have to make sure that he is not our nominee. We have no chance at winning elections if we are in a position where our party has abandoned principle and abandoned value and abandoned fundamental fidelity to the Constitution in order to embrace a cult of personality.
Trump holds a substantial lead in 2024 GOP primary polls, with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis consistently a distant second place.
Aren't you glad to live in a free state?
And on the Democratic side,
I don't think he would win. I don't think a lot of people are happy with him.
Voters in Iowa, an early primary state, are casting doubt on a second term for President Biden.
I think there's probably some other candidates that we get some fresh blood in there.
even though recent polls show most Democrats would prefer a new candidate to run in 2024. Biden reportedly plans to launch his re-election campaign after the midterms, opening the door for a possible rematch with former President Donald Trump. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Two of the nation's busiest cities are scrambling. New York and Washington, D.C. are seeing a steady stream of migrants arriving on buses, a tactic coming from Texas and Arizona. Thousands of immigrants continue to breach the southern border each month, and governors of the states most impacted say Democrats in blue cities are ignoring an immigration crisis that's spiraling out of control. CBN's Tara Mershner brings us this story.
Mayors in both cities complain the busloads of some 8,000 migrants into New York and here in D.C. strain resources. The governors counter that Texas, Arizona, and other border states need relief as migrants constantly flood their communities, an estimated 2 million plus this year. Problems caused by record levels of illegal immigration now hitting home far from the southern border. As one bus after another pulls into New York's Port Authority, the Big Apple is searching for space.
We've opened 13 hotels to increase our capacity, and we're looking at every single option that we have.
With the school year starting, city officials are also integrating migrant children into the public school system.
We're showing these families that they are not in this alone, and we're making sure that our schools are ready to do the same.
Over the last few months, thousands of migrants have also been offered free rides from Texas to the nation's capital, courtesy of Arizona Governor Doug Ducey and Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Before we began busing illegal immigrants, it was just Texas and Arizona that bore the brunt of all of the chaos and all the problems that come with it.
Migrants are overwhelming nonprofits and charities. This busload from Arizona arriving at a church near Capitol Hill, greeted by workers from an international relief agency.
We're asking the governor to please stop and let all of us work together to figure out how we can best provide the assistance that these human beings need.
For the second time, the Biden administration has denied D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's plea for help, saying it could not fulfill the request. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at the upcoming elections in Israel and talk about the possibility that Benjamin Netanyahu could become prime minister once again. We're going to do that with our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. It's coming up right after this. Stay with us. November 1st, Israelis will head to the polls for the fifth time in less than 4 years. CBN News visited one of the events leading up to the election, the primary elections for Likud, Israel's largest political party. Here's our Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, now.
Welcome to Israeli democracy. This is the Likud primary, almost like a carnival atmosphere, where a number of candidates are running for 25 spots on the Likud list for this upcoming election on November 1st.
More than 3 dozen political parties like the Likud either hold primary elections to determine the list of candidates, elect candidates through their institutions, or appoint them through the party leadership. When the list is chosen, those candidates will qualify for the Knesset based on the number of seats the party wins in the election. For example, if a party wins 7 seats, the first 7 people on its list get those seats. CBN News talked with Jerusalem's Deputy Mayor Flor Hassan Nahum and a candidate vying for a spot on the Likud list about the importance of November's election.
Unfortunately, we're getting attacked left and right. As you know, countries adopting BDS legislation, countries who are adopting a narrative that has got nothing to do with the reality here against Israel.
The stakes are enormous, including the Israeli-Palestinian issue, terrorism threats on each border, the future of the Abraham Accords, and at the top of the list, a nuclear Iran. Despite these pressing issues, Hassan Nahum explained why Israel has had so many elections in the past several years and what caused the most recent coalition government to fail.
We have a system which is all about pro-Netanyahu, anti-Netanyahu, people who should be in Netanyahu's camp because they're right-wing. They have almost the same opinions about almost everything. But for personal reasons, they are anti-Netanyahu. And so in the last year, we had this crazy puzzle of a government where nobody could move, nobody could say anything, nobody could do anything, because everything would offend the other people that they were sitting with.
Many hope Israel's next election brings stability. And although its politics can appear uniquely chaotic, Hassan Nahum says Israel and the U.S. share a common political bond.
If anybody has any doubt that Israel is a lively, dynamic democracy, you just have to look at the images today, and they'll know that Israel is an island in the sea. It's a democratic island, like America, same values, in a very different sea over here.
And Chris has traveled from Jerusalem to join us here in the United States. Well, today, Netanyahu seems to be the focal point of these elections. What are the chances of him becoming prime minister again?
Actually, Ephraim, they're very good right now. The recent polls say that he may have 60, 61, or 62 seats. You have to get at least 61 seats to become prime minister or control the coalition government. And it looks very good. It looks harder for some of the left-leaning parties to make a coalition government, but it's very fragile. I mean, these polls can shift 1 or 2 seats within a day or two, and there's a long way to November 1st. But if anybody has a chance to become prime minister, it would be Benjamin Netanyahu.
All right. Aside from Netanyahu himself, what are the key issues?
Well, the key issue right now, as Hassan Nahum said, you know, the BDS movement is one of them. Many Israelis right now, just like Americans, feel like the economic factors are the maybe #1 domestic issue right now. I think there was a recent poll that said 44% of Israelis say that's the #1 issue. There's a very high cost of living there in Israel. On the foreign scene, Iran is the #1 issue. And whether or not Israel will have to preemptively strike against Iran's nuclear factor, that's one of the main issues. Another big issue is the Israeli-Palestinian issue and how the government or whomever is next prime minister is going to deal with that. Will they advocate a two-state solution? Will they try to divide Jerusalem? Those are all big issues. In Jerusalem, Benny Gantz, who's now the defense minister, actually said that maybe part of Jerusalem would have to be given to the Palestinians. So that's a big issue for many Israelis.
What about Israel's relations with the Biden administration?
Well, that came to the forefront when President Biden visited Israel just a few weeks ago. One of the main things that he did was he advocated the two-state solution, like the Barack Obama administration. The Trump administration took a whole different tact on that. And the other thing is the Iranian nuclear deal. We may be a few days away from the U.S. signing a nuclear deal with Iran. That's huge, and many Israelis, including the current acting Prime Minister Yair Lapid, are advocating to the U.S., don't get into this deal. It's going to be a bad deal. It's going to be bad for the Middle East, and especially for the Jewish state.
Okay, remind us in terms of the election there, the timeline, what happens next?
Well, November 1st is when the election happens. After the election, whomever becomes the largest party, they're going to have several weeks to form a coalition government. And there's so many factors that could determine what coalition government happens one way or another. To illustrate how complex Israeli politics are, there's mainly 30 political parties that will be in the election this coming November 1st.
Fascinating to watch. You're on top of it. So glad you are and not me. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you in-house today.
Good to be with you, Ephraim.
Still ahead, we are going to hear from two music creators from two very different music cultures, and their efforts together were born in an area where racial unrest made headlines around the world. We're going to hear their remarkable story and the story behind their new release right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Stephen McWhirter and Jason Clayborn are two music creators from two very different church music cultures. One has a rich black gospel sound. The other has a unique voice in the world of worship. Together, they are amazing, and their sound was born in one of the places where racial unrest made headlines around the world. Their newest release is a sound for the time. It's called Rapha.
God, Jehovah. Jehovah Rapha, you're our healer, you and you alone.
Your current single, Rapha, how did that happen? What's what drove it?
Man, so much stuff was going on in the world. Man, we just one day were just like, man, we need to talk about who God is as being a healer.
In the middle of the dark.
You both have individual testimony. You were addicted to meth, and I think I've heard you described it as yourself as a wounded preacher's kid. So how do you go from wounded preacher's kid to meth addict to worship leader?
Right, that's a good question. You know, my dad was an evangelist. I grew up watching him preach on Sunday morning, and then behind closed doors, I saw him physically abuse my mom. I said, you know what? If God's real, he's not good. And I don't want anything to do with this Jesus guy. So I really quickly just started rebelling. 13, I'm smoking, drinking. 15, it's cocaine and pills, and I'm selling drugs. And by the time I'm 17, I'm a full-out crystal meth addict. I'm using crystal meth every day for almost 6 years. And somebody gave me this book, been praying for me, called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. 3 o'clock in the morning. I've got drugs on the side table next to me, seemingly the most improbable place for someone to get saved. And I say it's the kindness of a very real God to meet a wounded pastor's kid in a place completely untouched by the hands of man. And in this place, we had like an internal dialogue. I didn't audibly hear him, but I knew I was talking to him, you know. He was like, you know, God, I want to give you my life. I want to quit all this addiction, all this darkness I've known for so long. I want to, but I can't. And the thought more powerful than words. I just feel like the Holy Spirit said, you won't do it, I'll do it.
Were you a man on the run as well at some point?
No, not my story is totally different. You know, we grew up in church. My grandmother was the minister of music for 50 years almost. God has given me favor and put me around greatness a long time ago, and I didn't realize it as a kid.
So what unites you two? What happens that makes you guys say, you know, we should...
The Lord? Somebody called Jesus.
We should make albums together.
Right.
During the pandemic, we were like, hey, let's get together and do something. And we did, and it was so fun. Like, it wasn't work at all. It was like, oh my gosh, I love this. But there were some people going, hey, you know, some people are watching you guys around here and are paying attention to this and wondering what God's up to, you know?
I mean, so that the union literally comes at the height of
some tough
racial
stuff.
tension in this country.
Not that we thought about it like that, because to be honest with you, this is a very kingdom friendship. It's not, oh, hey, we should do something because I'm white and you're black. It's man, I love you. Let's do something together. This is fun. And it became that, not because it was what we were intending, right?
And it's us not trying to turn each other into each other. It's us being who we are and allowing God and allowing the truthful conversations to happen. We're able to say, he'll call me sometimes like, Jay, I need to get this off my chest. And
just have a conversation.
Just have a conversation. And I think that that's what helps build kingdom, and what's building the relationship is you're able to listen to my story. You're able to listen to the hardships and the things that I've been through and get a understanding of why this is like this and why my culture is like this. And I get an understanding of why your culture is like this, which makes it easier for us to do ministry together.
I think genuine love and grace, which those are big words to throw around, but at their core, they honor you and they honor each other. And you, like, with real love and grace, you begin to trust each other. So he can say whatever he wants to me because I know him and I love him, and he has grace to do that with me, and vice versa. When we're fixed on the Lord, we're not fixed on each other. Right? I mean, it says every knee will bow, every tongue will confess, and we'll all sing together to him, holy, holy. And it'll all be different tongues, different nations. There won't be a Kirk Franklin room. There won't be a Hillsong room. It'll just be all at once adoring him.
And I think with us, we just like, we do it if you like it or not. You know, it's what God gave us, and we roll with it, and people they're grabbing a hold to it.
In 2020, these two artists recorded choir sessions. They then released a Christmas single that was featured in the Chosen TV series Christmas Special. You can also find Stephen and Jason on albums like Highest Praise, that was released in 2021. Tonight, be sure and join us for an all-new edition of Studio 5. We're headed to LA Skid Row for a conversation with recording artist Major. Best-selling author Annie F. Downs will join us in a chase to experience some much-needed fun. And we have a preview of a powerful film about Mamie Till. She's a woman you need to meet. You can catch Studio 5 on the CBN News Channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern. You can also find it on the CBN News app. When we come back, we're going to have an encouraging word for your Wednesday. Stay with us. It is time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is love. Remember this, God doesn't just love you, He is love, and that love moves Him to give. He's also calling you to do the same. He needs you to be love to someone in need of knowing Him, someone who doesn't fully know His love. With that word, I encourage you to be loved today and make it a wonderful Wednesday. And be sure to have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. Do it on purpose and with purpose. That's a wrap for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories we've shared with you today. You can do that by emailing us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. We look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye, everybody.